Son, she chose my best friend over me. Now I'm dating her sister. The rain hammered against my apartment window. Like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop a reminder of the night everything fell apart. I sat there, bourbon in hand, staring at the photo on my phone, the three of us at Jake's birthday party just 6 months ago. Sarah's radiant smile between Jake and me, her arm around my waist, his hand on her shoulder. We looked so happy, so naive. I should have seen it coming. The late night study sessions that suddenly became necessary, the inside jokes I wasn't part of anymore, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about him, a spark that used to be reserved for me. But I didn't want to see it. Love makes you blind, they say, and I was stumbling in the dark. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my spiral of self-pity. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was past midnight on a Tuesday. Through the peephole, I saw a familiar face, but not the one that had been haunting my thoughts. It was Emma, Sarah's younger sister, soaked to the bone and shivering. Emma, what the hell are you doing here? She pushed past me into the apartment, leaving a trail of rainwater on my hardwood floor. I couldn't stay there anymore, Marcus. Not with them. Not after what they did to you. I handed her a towel from the bathroom, watching as she wrung out her long auburn hair, so much like Sarah's, yet somehow completely different. Where Sarah was all sharp angles and calculated moves, Emma was soft curves and spontaneous energy. They're at your place, I asked, though I already knew the answer. She nodded, wrapping the towel around her shoulders. Sarah brought him over for dinner. Mom was gushing over what a perfect couple they make. I wanted to throw my plate at the wall. This was unexpected. Emma and I had always been friendly, but we'd never been particularly close. She was 3 years younger than Sarah and me, still in college, while we were navigating our first real jobs. But sitting there in my living room, fury blazing in her green eyes, she looked anything but young. You want some coffee, something stronger? I offered. Whatever you're having, she said, gesturing to my glass. I poured her 2 fingers of bourbon, and we sat in silence for a moment, the rain providing a rhythmic soundtrack to our shared anger. You know what the worst part is? Emma finally spoke. She had the audacity to ask me if I thought you'd be okay with them being together, like she cared about your feelings after the fact. I laughed bitterly. 3 years together, and she couldn't even break up with me before moving on to my best friend. Or former best friend, I should say. Jake's an ass, Emma said simply. I never liked him. Too smooth, too charming. The kind of guy who remembers everyone's name at a party, but forgets his promises the next morning. It was true. Jake had always been the life of the party, the guy everyone wanted to be around. I'd been friends with him since freshman year of college, drawn to his confidence like a moth to flame. But Emma was right. There was something hollow beneath all that charisma. Well, how long do you think it was going on? I asked, voicing the question that had been eating at me for weeks. Emma took a long sip of her bourbon. Honestly, I think it started at the cabin. The cabin. Jake's family's place up in the mountains. We'd all gone for a long weekend in September. Sarah, Jake, a few other friends, and me. Emma had tagged along at the last minute, when her own plans fell through. I remembered Sarah and Jake volunteering to go get firewood together, gone for over an hour. I joked about them getting lost. I saw them, Emma continued, by the lake. They weren't doing anything, just talking. But the way they were looking at each other, I knew. I should have told you. And they wouldn't have changed anything. I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. If it wasn't, then it would have been later. Sarah always gets what she wants. Emma snorted. God, doesn't she perfect Sarah with her perfect job and her perfect apartment and her perfectly stolen boyfriend? There was something in her voice, a bitterness that ran deeper than sisterly annoyance. I studied her face in the dim light of my living room. She had the same delicate features as Sarah, but where Sarah wore them like armor, Emma's were open, vulnerable. You want to know something fucked up? Emma said, refilling her glass without asking. I've had a crush on you since I was 19. The confession hung in the air between us, heavy as the storm outside. I didn't know what to say. Emma had always been Sarah's kid sister in my mind background noise, in the symphony of our relationship. Emma, I know. You were with Sarah. You were happy. I wasn't going to be that girl. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out, my sister had no problem being that girl. I thought back to all the family dinners, the holiday gatherings, the casual run-ins when Emma would visit Sarah. Had there been signs, a lingering glance, a too long hug? I'd been so focused on Sarah that I'd never noticed. You're drunk, I said gently. Not that drunk. She turned to face me fully. Do you know how hard it was? watching you love her knowing she didn't deserve you. You brought her flowers every Friday. You learned to cook her favorite meal, that ridiculously complicated risotto. You drove 3 hours to surprise her at her conference in Chicago. And what did she do? She threw it all away for a guy who can't even spell commitment. Every word was true, and each one stung. I had tried so hard to be the perfect boyfriend to be worthy of Sarah's love. But maybe that had been the problem. Maybe I'd been so busy trying to earn her love that I'd never stopped to ask if she was earning mine. I should go, Emma said, suddenly standing up. This was a mistake. I'm sorry. Wait. I caught her hand. You can't go back out in this weather. Take the couch at least until the storm passes. She looked at our joined hands, then up at me. Just the couch. Emma! I know. Too soon, too weird, too everything. She sank back into the couch. But can you honestly tell me you haven't thought about it? Even for a second. Getting back at them. I had thought about it. The moment Emma walked through my door, soaking wet and righteously angry on my behalf, a small vindictive part of me had whispered, this would destroy her. Dating Sarah's sister would be the ultimate revenge, a perfectly orchestrated response to her betrayal. But looking at Emma, now vulnerable and slightly drunk and achingly beautiful, I knew it would be wrong to use her that way. She deserved better than to be someone's revenge plot. That's not who I want to be, I said finally. Emma smiled sadly. You're a better person than any of us deserve, Marcus. We talked until the storm passed and the first hints of dawn crept through my windows. Emma told me about her photography, her dreams of traveling the world with just her camera and a backpack. I told her about feeling stuck in my corporate job, about the novel I'd been trying to write for 2 years. We carefully avoided talking about Sarah and Jake creating our own bubble where they didn't exist. When Emma finally fell asleep on my couch, I covered her with a blanket and retreated to my bedroom. But sleep wouldn't come. My mind raced with possibilities and complications, with the strange turn my life had taken in just a few hours. 2 months later. You're doing this to get back at me, Sarah said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. We were at Merchant's Coffee, the place where we'd had our first date. She'd texted me urgently, saying we needed to talk. I knew what was coming. The grapevine had been working overtime. Not everything is about you, Sarah, I replied, stirring my coffee calmly. Dating my sister, really, Marcus? That's low even for you. Even for me, I laughed. That's rich coming from the woman who was sleeping with my best friend while we were still together. Sarah had the grace to look slightly ashamed. We didn't sleep together until after what? After you emotionally checked out of our relationship. After you decided Jake was a better option. Please spare me the technicalities. She leaned back, studying me. Emma's using you, you know. She's always been jealous of me, always wanted what I had. Maybe I conceded. Or maybe she just recognized something worth having that you threw away. The truth was more complicated than either of us was willing to admit in that moment. Emma and I hadn't planned on anything happening. After that night in my apartment, we'd started texting. Little things at first, memes, complaints about work, restaurant recommendations. Then coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into dinner. And dinner turned into long walks through the city, talking about everything and nothing. I discovered that Emma was funny in a way Sarah never was, self-deprecating and silly, where Sarah was witty and cutting. She had a passion for life that was infectious, finding beauty in abandoned buildings and graffitied walls where others saw urban decay. She listened when I talked about my writing, really listened, asking questions that showed she understood what I was trying to achieve. The first kiss happened 3 weeks after the storm on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. It was a cliche, and we both knew it, but somehow that made it perfect. She's my sister, Sarah said now as if I'd forgotten. She was your sister when you started dating my best friend too, I countered. Did that stop you? That's different. How? Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she didn't have a ready answer. Look, I said, suddenly tired of the conversation. Emma and I, it's not about you. I know that's hard for you to believe, but not everything revolves around Sarah Morrison. I like her. She makes me laugh. She makes me want to be better. And unlike some people, she actually seems to want to be with me. I wanted to be with you, Sarah protested. No, you wanted someone stable while you figured out what you really wanted. And when you did, you didn't have the decency to end things cleanly. You made me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. You gaslit me, Sarah. She flinched at the word. I never meant... I know, I interrupted. You never mean to hurt people. Things just happen to you, right? You're just a passenger in your own life, carried along by forces beyond your control. That's not fair. None of this is fair, I said, standing up. But we all make choices. You chose Jake. I chose to move on. And yes, I chose Emma. Not to hurt you, not to get revenge, but because she makes me happy. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient for your family dinners. I left her sitting there, staring at her untouched latte. As I walked out into the bright morning sun, my phone buzzed. Emma had sent a photo, a candid shot she'd taken of me riding at the park yesterday, completely absorbed in my notebook. The caption read, "My favorite view." For the first time in months, I smiled without forcing it. 4 months later, "I'm nervous," Emma admitted, adjusting her dress for the 10th time. We were standing outside her parents' house, about to attend her father's 60th birthday party. It would be the first time I'd seen the entire Morrison family since Emma and I became official. "No, you look beautiful," I told her, meaning it. She'd chosen a simple green sundress that brought out her eyes, her hair pulled back in a loose bun with tendrils framing her face. "That's not what I'm worried about," she said, but she smiled. "Mom's been difficult about this whole situation." Difficult was an understatement. Mrs. Morrison had called me twice, trying to convince me to think about what I was doing to her family, as if I was the one who'd blown it up in the first place. "We don't have to stay long," I offered. Emma shook her head. "No, I'm not letting them chase us away. Besides, Dad likes you. He told me you were the only boyfriend who ever helped him clean the garage without being asked." That was true. I'd always gotten along with Mr. Morrison, bonding over our shared love of classic cars and detective novels. I wondered if that would be enough to survive tonight. The door opened before we could knock. Sarah stood there, Jake beside her, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Emma," Sarah said coolly. "Marcus." "Sarah," I nodded. "Jake." Jake couldn't meet my eyes. In all the months since everything happened, we'd never actually spoken. Mutual friends had told me he felt terrible about how things went down. But feeling bad and making amends were two different things. "Mom's in the kitchen," Sarah said, stepping aside to let us pass. "Dad's showing off his new grill on the patio." As we walked through the familiar house, Emma's hand in mine, I was struck by how different everything felt. The photos on the wall that used to include me had been edited or removed. The couch where Sarah and I had spent countless Sunday afternoons was rearranged. It was the same space, but an entirely different world. "Emma, darling." Mrs. Morrison appeared wearing an apron and a strained smile. "And Marcus. How nice." The way she said nice suggested it was anything but. "Hi, Mom," Emma said, not letting go of my hand. "Need help with anything?" "No, dear. Why don't you go say happy birthday to your father? I need to speak with Marcus for a moment." Emma looked at me, concern in her eyes. I squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Go ahead, I'll be right there." Once Emma was gone, Mrs. Morrison dropped the pretense of politeness. "I don't approve of this." I gathered that I said evenly. "You're using my daughter to get back at Sarah. It's transparent and cruel." I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "Mrs. Morrison, I understand why you might think that, but I need you to know that's not what this is. I care about Emma. Really care about her. You cared about Sarah too once." "I did, and she chose someone else. That's life. People make choices, relationships end, but what Emma and I have, it's separate from that. It's real." She studied me for a long moment. "Emma's not as strong as Sarah. She feels things more deeply. If you hurt her, I won't," I said simply. "I can't promise we'll be together forever. No one can promise that. But I can promise that I'll be honest with her, that I'll treat her with respect, and that my feelings for her have nothing to do with Sarah." Mrs. Morrison's expression softened slightly. "She's happier than I've seen her in years." "She makes me happy too." "Well," she said, turning back to the stove, "I suppose that's something. Go on then. Don't let her father monopolize you with car talk." I found Emma on the patio, laughing at something her father was saying. She lit up when she saw me, and I felt that familiar warmth in my chest. Her father clapped me on the shoulder immediately, launching into a story about a vintage Mustang he'd seen for sale. The rest of the party was surprisingly civil. Sarah and Jake kept their distance, and I found myself genuinely enjoying conversations with Emma's aunts and cousins. Emma stayed close, her hand finding mine whenever we were near each other, little touches that felt like promises. As the sun set, I found myself alone on the back deck for a moment. Jake appeared beside me, beer in hand. "We should talk," he said. "Should we?" He sighed. "Look, man, I know I fucked up. The way it happened, there's no excuse." "No, there isn't." "I loved her," he said quietly. "I know that doesn't make it better. But it wasn't just some fling. I fell in love with your girlfriend, and I handled it in the worst possible way." I considered his words. "Are you happy?" He seemed surprised by the question. Yeah, we are." "Then I guess it worked out how it was supposed to," I said. "Doesn't mean we're good Jake. I don't know if we'll ever be good. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm actually grateful in a weird way. I'm grateful. I gestured through the window to where Emma was helping her mother serve cake, laughing at something her cousin said. If you hadn't taken Sarah, I never would have found Emma. And as much as it hurt at the time, I can see now that Sarah and I weren't right for each other. We were trying to force something that wasn't there. Jake was quiet for a moment. Emma's good for you, I can see it. You're more yourself with her. It was true. With Sarah, I'd always felt like I was performing trying to be the man I thought she wanted. With Emma, I could just be. For what it's worth, Jake continued, I'm sorry. For how it happened, for lying to you, for being a coward about it. You deserved better from both of us. I nodded, accepting the apology, without offering forgiveness. Some wounds heal but leave scars, reminders of lessons learned. Emma appeared in the doorway. Everything okay out here? Yeah, I said, moving to her side. Everything's good. Jake took the hint and headed back inside. Emma slipped her arms around my waist, resting her head against my chest. Thank you for being here, she said. I know it wasn't easy. Worth it, I said, kissing the top of her head. You're worth it. We stood there as the stars came out, the sounds of the party fading behind us. It wasn't the life I'd planned, wasn't the story I thought I was writing. But maybe that was the point. The best stories, like the best relationships, are the ones that surprise you. 1 year later. I can't believe you're making me do this, Emma groaned, struggling with the tent poles. We were camping at the same lake where, according to Emma, Sarah and Jake's relationship had truly begun. It had been my idea, a way to reclaim the space to write new memories over old ones. You said you wanted to try new things. I reminded her, helping her secure the rainfly. I meant like exotic restaurants or salsa dancing, not wrestling with equipment in the wilderness. She shot back, but she was smiling. The past year hadn't been without its challenges. There were awkward family gatherings, mutual friends who chose sides, and the occasional moment when I'd catch a gesture or expression that reminded me painfully of Sarah. But there had been so much more road trips where Emma played photographer and I played navigator. Quiet mornings writing while she edited photos beside me, spontaneous dance parties in my kitchen, deep conversations that lasted until dawn. I'd finished my novel finally with Emma, as my first reader and fiercest champion. She'd had her first gallery, showing a collection of urban portraits that sold out opening night. We'd moved in together 6 months ago, finding a light-filled apartment in Brooklyn that felt like ours from the moment we walked in. There, Emma said triumphantly as the tent finally stood stable. If this thing collapses in the middle of the night, I'm sleeping in the car. Deal, I agreed, pulling her close. But I think we did pretty good for first-timers. We make a good team, she said, and I knew she wasn't just talking about the tent. As the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I thought about how far we'd come. The pain of Sarah's betrayal had faded to a dull ache, a reminder of growth rather than a fresh wound. Jake and I would never be friends again, but we'd found a cordial distance that worked for everyone. Sarah had stopped trying to insert herself into our relationship, seemingly accepting that Emma and I were real, not some elaborate revenge plot. Hey, Emma said, interrupting my thoughts. What are you thinking about? Just how weird life is, I said. 1.5 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. Career, relationship, future. Then it all fell apart. And now, I looked at her, really looked at her. The fading light caught the gold flecks in her green eyes, and her hair was already escaping from its ponytail despite her best efforts. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was present. Really there with me in a way I'd never experienced before. Now I realize I didn't have anything figured out, I admitted. I was just following a script I thought I was supposed to follow. With you, sir, there's no script. We're making it up as we go. Is that scary? She asked. Terrifying, I said honestly, and exciting, and exactly what I want. She kissed me then, soft and sure, and I knew that whatever came next, we'd figure it out together. Later, as we sat by the fire roasting marshmallows, badly in Emma's case, she said, I need to tell you something. My heart skipped, old anxieties rising. Okay, relax, she laughed, seeing my expression. It's not bad. At least I don't think it is. I got offered a job, a big one. Travel photographer for National Geographic. It would mean being gone for weeks at a time, sometimes months. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Emma, that's incredible. That's your dream job. But what about us? She asked, vulnerability creeping into her voice. What about your writing, your job, our apartment? We'll figure it out, I said without hesitation. Maybe I'll take a sabbatical, come with you sometimes, or I'll use the time to write. We'll make it work. You do that, rearrange your life for my career. Emma, I said, taking her hands. You've been my biggest supporter. You believed in my writing when I didn't. You pushed me to finish my novel, to submit it to agents. Now it's my turn. This is your dream. We'll make it work. Tears welled in her eyes. I love you, she said. I've wanted to say that for months, but I didn't want to pressure you, didn't want you to feel like you had to say it back if you weren't ready. And actually, I interrupted. I love you too. It was the first time either of us had said it, and the words hung in the air like stars, bright and permanent. Really, she asked. Really, not because you're not Sarah, not because of convenience or revenge or any of the reasons people warned us about. I love you because you're you, because you see the world in a way that makes me want to see it too, because you challenge me and support me and make me laugh even when I'm trying to be serious. She laughed, wiping at her eyes. God, we're really doing this, aren't we? The whole thing. Love and complications and choosing each other anyway. Yeah, I agreed. We really are. As the fire crackled and the stars emerged overhead, I thought about the strange path that had led us here. If someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be camping with Sarah's sister, planning a future that revolved around her dreams, I would have thought they were insane. But life has a way of surprising you, of breaking you down, only to build you back up stronger. Sarah had chosen my best friend over me. At the time, it felt like the end of the world. Now I could see it for what it was, a necessary ending that led to an unexpected beginning. Emma curled into my side, pointing out constellations she'd learned from her photography mentor. I held her close, feeling a contentment I'd never experienced with Sarah. This wasn't the safe, predictable love I'd thought I wanted. This was wild and uncertain and absolutely right. Thank you, Emma said suddenly. For what? For seeing me, she said simply. Not as Sarah's sister, not as a consolation prize or a revenge plot, just as me. Thank you for being brave enough to show up at my door that night, I replied. For being honest about your feelings when it would have been easier to stay quiet. I almost didn't, she admitted. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, talking myself out of it. But then I thought about watching you with her for another 3 years, pretending I didn't feel what I felt and I couldn't do it. Even if you'd rejected me, at least I would have tried. I'm glad you did, I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. We fell asleep in the tent that night, Emma's camera bag serving as a makeshift pillow, our sleeping bags zipped together despite the warm night. I woke once to find her photographing the moonlight through the tent fabric. Always the artist, always finding beauty in unexpected places. Go back to sleep, she whispered, but I watched her work instead, marveling at her concentration at the way she bit her lip when adjusting the settings. This was love, I realized. Not the grand gestures or the perfect moments, but this watching someone be themselves and feeling lucky to witness it. Epilogue, 3 years later. Marcus, you're going to wear a hole in the floor, Emma called from the bathroom. I stopped pacing, running my hands through my hair for the 100th time. I'm not nervous, I lied. She emerged radiant in a simple white dress, wildflowers woven through her hair. Of course not. You always pace like a caged tiger when you're perfectly calm. The beach stretched out before us empty except for our small gathering. We'd chosen sunrise for the ceremony, Emma's favorite time to photograph, when the light was soft and forgiving. My parents were there, Emma's parents who had finally fully accepted us, a handful of our closest friends. And yes, Sarah and Jake, because families are complicated and forgiveness we'd learned was more for ourselves than anyone else. You ready for this? Emma asked, slipping her hand into mine. I've been ready since you showed up at my door soaking wet and furious, I said. She laughed. Romantic. Should I mention that in my vows? Please don't, I groaned. But as we walked down the makeshift aisle, sand between our toes, and the sun painting the sky in impossible colors, I thought about mentioning it in mine. How do you explain to people that your love story began with heartbreak? That the best thing that ever happened to you walked through your door on the worst night of your life? The ceremony was simple, just the way we wanted it. Emma had spent the last 2 years traveling the world, documenting climate change effects on indigenous communities. I'd gone with her when I could, writing my second novel in hostels and cafes from Morocco to Myanmar. When we were apart, we wrote letters, actual letters, filling them with sketches and pressed flowers and terrible poetry. My first novel had been published to modest success, the dedication reading, "To E, who sees the world in f-stops and teaches me to do the same." Sarah had sent a congratulatory text when it came out. I'd thanked her and meant it. Without her choices, none of this would have existed. As Emma and I exchanged vows, promising to support each other's dreams and forgive each other's failures, I caught sight of Sarah wiping away a tear. Jake had his arm around her, their own wedding rings catching the morning light. They'd married last year in a big, elaborate ceremony that was everything ours wasn't. Emma and I had attended dancing together to the band they'd hired, finally comfortable in our strange, restructured family dynamic. Yeah, and I promise, Emma was saying, to always be honest with you, even when it's hard, to push you to be better while loving you exactly as you are, to take pictures of you when you're not looking, because that's when you're most beautiful, to choose you again and again in all the small moments that make up a life. My throat tight with emotion, I recited my own vows. I promise to be your first reader and biggest fan, to carry your camera bag even when it weighs 1,000 pounds, to make you coffee exactly how you like it, even though it's basically hot milk, with a splash of coffee, to remember that our love isn't despite our history, but because of it, to choose you not as a second choice or a consolation, but as my first and only choice every single day. When we kissed, sealing our promise as the sun broke fully over the horizon, our small gathering erupted in cheers. Emma's cousin popped champagne, my mother cried, and Emma's father clapped me on the back so hard I almost stumbled. Best plot twist ever, he said with a wink, and I had to agree. Later at the simple breakfast reception we'd organized at a beachside cafe, Sarah approached me while Emma was dancing with her father. I'm happy for you, she said, and I could tell she meant it. Both of you. You fit in a way we never did. Thank you, I said. And you and Jake. We're good. Different good than you and Emma, but good. She paused. I'm sorry for how it all happened. I know I've said it before, but seeing you today, I'm sorry. It led us where we were supposed to be, I said, watching Emma laugh as her father spun her. All of us. Sarah nodded, touching my arm briefly before returning to Jake. It was closure real and final. Emma appeared at my side, slightly breathless from dancing. Hey, husband. Hey, wife, I replied, still marveling at the words. Sarah, okay, she asked, always perceptive. Yeah, we're all okay. Good, she said, then grinned. Because I've got news that might make things weird again. Oh. She took my hand and placed it on her stomach. Turns out our camping trip last month was more successful than just getting the tent up on the first try. It took me a moment to understand, and then joy crashed over me like a wave. Really? Really, due in about 7 months. Surprise. I swept her into my arms, spinning her around as she laughed. Best plot twist ever. I echoed her father's words. As our friends and family celebrated around us as the sun climbed higher and the world sparkled with possibility, I thought about the winding path that had brought us here. Sarah choosing my best friend over me had felt like an ending, but it had been a beginning in disguise. Every choice, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt had led to this, to Emma, to our unborn child, to a love story that was messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. I love you, I told Emma, setting her down but keeping her close. I love you too, she replied. Even if you did date my sister first. Technically, she dated my best friend last, I pointed out. Technically, we're all idiots who figured it out eventually, Emma laughed. And really, that was the truth of it. We were all flawed people who had hurt and been hurt, who had made mistakes and wrong choices, but who had somehow found our way to where we belonged. It wasn't the clean, simple love story I'd once imagined for myself. It was better, real, and raw, and worth every complicated moment. As Emma pulled me back onto the makeshift dance floor, her hand protectively over the secret we now shared, I sent up a silent thank you to the universe, to Sarah, to Jake, to that stormy night when everything fell apart. Sometimes the best stories are the ones you never see coming, and ours was just beginning.